Do you delight in fright? Have you survived countless nights with Michael, Freddie, and Jason? Then welcome to AMC's Fear Fest, a month-long celebration of your favorite horror classics. All October, AMC has non-stop scares with marathons of the most can't-miss horror classics. We're talking Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Final Destination. Plus all the icons of fright you've come to expect from Fear Fest, including Carrie, Jeepers Creepers, and It. This year, Fear Fest is truly a carnival of frights, and it is hosted by the incomparable Janelle Monáe. Even the most unhinged slasher has nothing on our Hallow Queen. AMC's Fear Fest, these aren't just scary movies. These are the scares you love to come back to every October. Embrace the joy of horror with Fear Fest, all October on AMC. Welcome to another edition of Nightmare Fuel Creeps and Peepers, a special edition. Happy Halloween. I'm Dan Cummins. I'll be sharing another original short story of the fictional horror variety. Thanks so much for wanting to hear more of these stories, and a big thanks as well to AMC's Fear Fest for sponsoring this bonus Nightmare Fuel story and the replays of some of my favorite past Nightmare Fuels earlier this week. Some of you heard a version of this tale when I read it on the live show Haunted Halloween True Tales of Hallows Eve 4 last October from New Orleans. This is the first time it's shown up in the feed with the immersive scoring, and I've edited and altered it a bit. Added some extra scares, so I hope you enjoy it. Highly recommend noise cancellation headphones as always to get the most out of the sound design. Hope you enjoy this new nightmare. Time now for the tale of the Dead House. If you truly believe, I'm talking beyond a shadow of doubt, in something like ghosts or demons or any kind of supernatural monster, right down to the very core of your being, then I know you can remember exactly when and why you became a believer. For me, it was Halloween night, 1985. If you haven't actually ever experienced something firsthand, and I mean really, definitely, that was no trick of the light or my imagination, experience something in a way that your mind can never deny as much as you might desperately want it to, then you can be open to the paranormal. You can believe it in the same way someone who has never seen a UFO or an extraterrestrial can believe in aliens. But you can't know, not until it happens to you. All you can do is try your best to trust in the stories of others, to choose to believe that they're telling the truth, or that at least one of them is. And honestly, I think that's the best way to be a believer. Because then if you ever start to feel a little too scared one night, you can choose, at least until the sun rises the following morning, to stop trusting others. You can still tell yourself that the strange noise you just heard, or the shadowy figure you saw flitting past your peripheral vision wasn't anything paranormal, that it was only your imagination, that it was something that can be rationally explained away. And then later, when you feel safe again, you can go back to being a believer. You can start thinking that maybe it really was a ghost you heard or saw. You don't have to sit and stew in abject terror when you don't want to. Well, I don't have that luxury. I don't think there are things out there like ghosts and monsters. I know there are, because I've seen them. I've been attacked by things that are not part of the land of the living. For me, the supernatural isn't just real, it's dangerous. I'm going to tell you how I became a true believer. You don't have to believe me, of course, and it's honestly probably better if you don't. But I swear this is all true. My name is Ryan Mellard. I was born in 1975 in Denver, Colorado. When I was in the 4th grade, my parents got divorced. My dad, Dave, stayed in Denver. And me and my mom, Sue, I'm an only child, we moved an hour's drive away to Longmont, Colorado during the summer after I finished 4th grade. It's a small city where my grandparents lived, just north of Boulder. We moved into a rental a few blocks away from them near Roosevelt Park. It was a nice spot. I bet it still is. While Main Street was pretty rough back then, our neighborhood was cute and quaint. Kind of idyllic, really. Tree-lined, clean, well-manicured streets, lots of people out walking their dogs, kids laughing and riding their bikes past newly trimmed green lawns, and quite a few big homes with fresh coats of paint on both them and the fences that surrounded their yards. It was safe and wholesome, for the most part anyway. There were a lot of nice new homes mixed in with a lot of nice, or at least formerly nice, old homes from the city's early days. Like the one that changed my life. A Dutch colonial on the 1100 block of 3rd Avenue. I'm not sure if it's still there or not. I'd guess that it is. That the thing I assume still lives inside of it isn't about to let anyone tear it down. But I don't know for sure. It's been a while since I've been by to check. My grandparents passed away several years ago, and my mom lives in Sacramento now with her boyfriend Malik. My wife Lorna, our 8-year-old son Ivan, and our 3-year-old daughter Chelsea, we all live in Springfield, Missouri. I do know that the house was still standing the last time I drove past it back in the winter of 2009, back when I had returned to Longmont for my grandpa's funeral a few years after my mom had moved to California. And it still looked abandoned then, just like it did the first time I saw it with a few buddies on Halloween 40 years ago. Ty Mullins, Grayson Adams, and Austin Moore. They were my first 3 friends at Central Elementary School, and the 4 of us would remain good friends who hung out consistently all through graduation from Longmont High. We still keep in touch to this day. I imagine we'll stay connected to some degree for the rest of our lives. We share a special bond. Even though I was the only one who went into that house that night, we all saw something, and it changed all of our lives forever. We were in 5th grade and out trick-or-treating when it happened. Ty was dressed up as Darth Vader, Grayson was Skeletor from He-Man, and Austin was supposed to be dressed up like Data from the Goonies. Tough costume to pull off, and he definitely didn't pull it off. If I hadn't gone into that house, I'm positive that his costume would have easily been the most memorable part of that night. I was Batman. We were all extra excited to go trick-or-treating that Halloween because it was the very first year our parents were going to let us go without any adult supervision. And Ty and Grayson didn't have to bring their annoying younger siblings along either. We'd arranged to have a sleepover at my house. Usually a no-no on a school night, but it was a Thursday, almost the weekend, and it was Halloween. I remember my mom making a big batch of spaghetti for everybody, inspecting our costumes to make sure they were totally rad, and then wishing us good luck as we took off in search of treats and a little mischief. Around an hour later, after filling our bags half full of candy, we saw it. That old, big, abandoned home on 3rd. They called it, what I'm assuming some still call it if it's still around, the dead house. Dude, check out my lightsaber. How cool does it look in the dark? Ty had been reminding us how cool his glowing plastic lightsaber was about every 5 or 10 minutes for over 2 hours, ever since he'd showed up at my mom's house for dinner. Yeah, dude, we know it's cool. Stop rubbing it in our faces, said Austin, sounding frustrated. My costume blows, man. I knew I should have went as Luke Skywalker. That was my first choice, too. Then I could at least have had a lightsaber. We could have sword fights. What the hell was I thinking? None of these stupid gadgets even work. You still look pretty cool, though. Data's awesome, I lied, trying to make Austin feel better. His mood had continually sunk a little lower the longer we'd been out. His costume truly did blow. One of the grown-ups who'd given us some candy had actually told him that night that he shouldn't disrespect homeless Vietnam vets who were having trouble reintegrating into society. We still laugh about that to this day. Yeah, Data's awesome, Austin conceded, but I don't look cool. No one even knows I'm Data. I bet most of these dorks haven't even seen the Goonies. I look like a crazy person with a boxing glove taped to a tool belt and a trench coat. Now Grayson chimed in. He could never resist a chance to bust Austin's balls. You look crazy as shit. That guy was right, dude. You really shouldn't disrespect Vietnam vets, especially since you're Vietnamese. Then he poked Austin in the chest to ride him even more when he added, you should be grateful for all they've done for you and your family. Man, shut the hell up, Grayson, Austin yelled. I'm not Vietnamese, dipshit. I'm Cambodian. Same difference, Grayson said in total seriousness. Isn't Cambodia part of Vietnam? No! God, you really are such a dipshit, Austin shot back. Grayson was like the brother Austin didn't have and had never wanted. You should look at a map sometimes, he continued. Not that you can even read it. No wonder you always get bad grades. Grades and overall intelligence were a pretty sore subject for Grayson back then. He was dyslexic, but didn't know it yet, and just thought he was dumb. So did Austin. "Dude, shut up!" he yelled. "Maybe my grades would be better if I wasn't so busy fucking your mom all the time." Austin's mom was also a sore subject back then. All you had to do was make a comment about how good she looked, and Austin's face would get flushed, and he'd start yelling at you or even tackle and punch you. His mom was a bit younger than the rest of our moms. She was single, and she was gorgeous. We were all just about to hit puberty and becoming a lot more interested in girls. And poor Austin, every single one of us had some level of a crush on Carrie Vu. Austin about lost it. "Do what I tell you about talking shit about my mom!" he yelled. I had to step in between them. They probably weren't actually going to get in a fist fight, but I didn't feel like watching them wrestle again, and then having to hear them whine about their costumes getting messed up again. "Hey, guys, stop!" Ty yelled, suddenly excitedly pointing across the street. "There it is! The dead house." "Whoa," said Grayson, no longer caring at all about his spat with Austin. "I didn't think we were going to walk by it tonight." "Dude, that place is so creepy," quietly and solemnly added Austin. "What is it?" I asked, oblivious. I'd never heard of it before. "You seriously don't know about the dead house?" asked Ty, incredulous. He seemed genuinely taken aback. He reacted like he had just found out that I'd never heard of Star Wars. "Nah," I shook my head. Ty's eyes lit up with excitement. He was absolutely giddy to be able to share the neighborhood legend with someone new. "Okay," he said, suddenly very serious. "Check this out. Let's just chill here for a bit so you can hear it without getting distracted. That house," he said as he pointed for dramatic effect, "is super haunted." "Hell yeah, it is. It's like the most haunted house in the entire world. Like, not even joking," dramatically added Grayson. "Dude, shut up!" snapped an always easily irritated with Grayson Austin, before adding, "What do you know about the world? You haven't even left Colorado, dummy." "Yes, I have, douchebag," said a sick of being Austin's punching bag Grayson. "My dad took us to Yellowstone. We went to Idaho and Wyoming," he said, as if that somehow put him in the same category as Rick Steves or an international airline pilot. "Oh, okay, sorry," mocked Austin. "I didn't realize you were a modern-day Magellan." "Who's Magellan, dickhead? Is he your mom's?" Guys, yelled Ty. They were completely ruining his special presentation, his big magnanimous moment for the evening, and he wasn't having it. "Shut up, please. Let me tell him the story." Austin and Grayson grumbled and continued to glare at each other, but at least they weren't speaking now. And Ty continued. "A long time ago," he said slowly, "in a galaxy far away." "Shut up, Austin!" "Sorry, dude. Don't put the ball in the tee like that if you don't want me to swing." "Anyway, oh my God." "A long time ago," Ty repeated while he glared at Austin, "a lady lived there, and she made a deal with the devil, like the actual devil. He told her that in exchange for her killing her whole family, she'd be able to live forever." "What? Seriously?" I asked, smiling. I didn't believe in the devil. Not before that night. My family wasn't religious, and my dad had always told me that the devil was nothing more than a made-up boogeyman invented to give people a scapegoat for their own terrible choices. My friends weren't laughing. This was serious business for them. Ty spoke again, solemnly. "Seriously," he said. "I'm totally not joking. She really did kill her family. Both her kids, a boy and a girl." "I thought both her kids were girls," interjected Austin. "No, stupid, they were both boys," sniped Grayson. Guys, stop," shouted Ty. "That's not what matters. Just let me tell the story." Austin and Grayson both grumbled and fell silent again. "So like I was saying," continued Ty, "she killed both her kids and her husband too. But then the devil didn't reward her like he had promised. He tricked her. He was never going to let her live forever. He wasn't going to do anything for her. He laughed at her, told her she did it all for nothing, that she was the real monster now, and that now she was going to be haunted for the rest of her life by the ghost of her kids and her husband." When he first started talking, I thought that what he was saying was nothing but made-up nonsense, an urban legend, a campfire tale. But for whatever reason at this point, I started to wonder if the story was real, at least partly. and I remember beginning to feel a bit scared. And so now, she was like all messed up and stuff about it, he continued. And she started seeing the ghosts of her husband and her kids every night. And when she couldn't take it anymore, she hanged herself. On Halloween night, Grayson quickly and dramatically added, nodding his head for extra emphasis. Ty stared at me stoically and was silent for a few beats before he added, and ever since, she's been a ghost too. And her crazy murderous spirit has been trapped in that house, and she'll stay trapped there forever. Yeah, and she's all alone since her kid's ghosts and her husband's ghosts were able to move on and rest once she died, Austin added, as if he had some special inside information about how hauntings work, and what he had just shared was undeniable, indisputable fact. Yep, Ty confirmed. Austin's right. But on Halloween night, she comes back to life, but she's still stuck inside that house, all alone. Unless, Grayson taunted, you want to join her. Ty nodded and said if anyone knocks on her door on Halloween night, her ghost might answer. She'll look like a real living person, and she'll invite you in. But don't do it. He got quieter and more dramatic for what he said next. Because if you go in, she'll kill you! Austin yelled while making a big lunge towards me in an attempt to scare the shit out of me and make me jump and scream. An attempt that worked perfectly, I should add. I've always startled easily, and damn if he didn't get me good. I screamed like a girl and dropped my bag of candy. Hearing that story at night, on Halloween night no less, while looking over at the big dark abandoned house, it left me spooked as hell. But I wasn't about to let my new friends see that. No way. The three of them had all been friends for several years already. I was a new guy. I'd only known them a few months. If all of a sudden they thought I was chicken and started telling other kids at school, I would have been done for. I'd have never recovered. I would have been doomed to sit at the same hot lunch table as Ricky the bedwetter and Cameron the crybaby, who couldn't seem to make it through a single day of classes without bursting into tears because of something as trivial as not enough kids complimenting him about his new G.I. Joe Trapper Keeper. At least that's what I believed at the time. That it was either those three friends or being branded a social leper. So I pretended to be a lot tougher than I was. Pfft, bullshit, I snorted with all the false bravado I could muster up as I picked up my fallen candy. They all slowly stopped laughing. No, it's true, Ty emphatically stated. Yeah, dude, it's 100% true, Austin confirmed. It's like 1,000% true, dude, Grayson said solemnly. 1,000% isn't actually any more than 100%, dipshit, corrected an annoyed Austin. Shut up, nerd! You know what I mean, Grayson snapped defensively. A smug Austin then doubled down with, I know you don't know how percentages work, dummy. Grayson was genuinely pissed again, and he taunted Austin asking, do you really want me to talk about your mom again, Austin? Your sexy, sexy mom? Austin looked like he actually might punch Grayson, shouting, dude, shut the fuck up about my mom! I'm serious! I'm gonna punch you in your fat face! Ty couldn't stand it when Austin and Grayson would not stop going back and forth at one another. I usually found it pretty annoying after a while too, but in that moment, I was happy for the distraction. I hoped that by the time they were done, they would all have stopped talking about the dead house. We'd have gotten back to trick-or-treating. But instead, Ty yelled, guys, shut up! Oh my God, shut up! What is your deal? Ryan, he said next, when Austin and Grayson quieted down for a few moments. He asked with a mischievous grin, you really think it's all bullshit? I wasn't sure I did, but I still didn't want to admit I was scared, so I doubled down. Yeah, of course. Haunted houses aren't real. My dad says so. I don't believe it. Hot damn, did I step in it with that one. Ty now said the exact words I dreaded hearing most in that moment. I felt like he spewed them out in slow motion. Then prove it. Walk over there and knock on the door. My stomach sank. My knees felt weak. How was I going to get out of this now? I made one last admittedly weak attempt at not losing face, while also not having to walk over there and knock on the door of that creepy-ass, maybe actually haunted house. Why? I asked. We all know no one's really there. It's abandoned. It would be pointless, a waste of time. Austin laughed. Ha ha ha! He called my bluff immediately. He is chicken! Oh, man! I'm not chicken, I said, sounding totally 1,000% chicken while I said it. Yeah, you are, Grayson gleefully added before starting to taunt me with a classic chicken sound. Buck, 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 buck! Buck, 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 buck! Go knock on the door if you're not chicken, Ty sneered. We'll wait. I paused, and then I threw out a Hail Mary. You guys coming with me? I asked. They all hesitated and looked at each other nervously for a moment or two before Ty said, No, we already all did it. Last year. Yeah, last year, both Austin and Grayson awkwardly confirmed. I immediately could tell they were lying. Didn't you all go trick-or-treating with your parents last year? I pointed out. After another awkward pause and more nervous glances, Austin spoke on behalf of the group. Like a lawyer they had hired to make some official statements with at a press conference. So what? We still did it. They watched us, okay? Stop stalling, Ryan. Are you going to do it, or are you too scared? Ty and Grayson both nodded in approval. They also folded their arms across their chests dramatically while they stared at me for added effect. I wanted to tell them that they were all full of shit. But again, I was the odd man out. It was 3 against 1. So I sighed and took a good long look at the so-called dead house. It looked like a place that used to be nice. It was a big brick 2-story home with 4 large windows in the front on the ground floor and 5 more large windows in the front on the second. But the 2 on each side of the top floor were right next to one another, which made the house look like it had a face. The 2 outer windows on each side of the second floor being the eyes, the middle one on the second floor being the nose, and all the windows in the door on the bottom floor forming a giant abnormally wide mouth. I hope that makes sense. I'm probably not describing it all that well, but it created this creepy effect, especially at night, where it looked like the house was literally grinning like a madman. The front yard had a couple of pine trees in some desperate need of trimming, and the grass and some shrubs were really overgrown. The backyard was fenced in, but the front yard was open, and a cracked, dirty sidewalk led up to the door like a bad omen, like the house tipping its hand as to what awaited inside. If you think this sidewalk looks rough, wait until you step through the door, little man. I might not have believed that houses could be haunted at that moment, but that place certainly looked haunted. I stared intensely at each of the windows, trying to detect any movement beyond them, but I didn't see anything. It was too dark. It was just an old abandoned house, I told myself, and it only looked scary because it was big and empty and dark, and no one had lived in it in a long time. I convinced myself that no woman who had killed her family had ever lived there. That was just a story. And that even if she had, the deals with the devil and the ghost parts of the story, that was nonsense. That was just stuff from stories and movies made for weird people who like to get scared. Nothing more. I clenched my jaw, steeled my will, and started walking, trying so hard not to let them see how scared I truly was. Fine, I said after I'd begun to cross the street. I'll go knock. And after nothing happens, we can get back to trick-or-treating. Famous last words. A few moments later, I was standing atop the small cement landing in front of the front door and looking back at my friends, Darth Vader, Skeletor, and a kid who looked like his parents had only given him 30 seconds at Goodwill to grab clothes for a costume. Vader, aka Ty, hunched his shoulders and threw his hands out at his sides, egging me on with a universal, "Are you going to do it or not?" shrug. I sighed. I didn't want to, but yes, I was going to do it. I slowly turned around, took a deep breath, and reminded myself, it's just an old house. No one is inside. It's a made-up story. I knocked 3 times, and nothing happened. So I turned around to face my crew again. I made the same gesture Ty had made moments ago, non-verbally asking them, "Are we good? Are we done here?" Grayson cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Do it again! Harder this time!" Then Austin chirped in with, "Yeah, louder! Make sure she heard you!" Then they all laughed. Another sigh. And probably also a frustrated mutter of, "God damn it," under my breath. I turned back around. Now I actually wasn't scared. Okay, maybe I was still a little scared, but mostly I was annoyed, and I just wanted to get it over with. I knocked 3 more times. And again, nothing happened. So I started to turn back around to face the guys and head their way, and that's when I heard the door open behind me. I snapped back around to face it. "Hello? Can I help you, young man?" A thin, average-looking white woman with shoulder-length brunette hair and eyeglasses, a woman who looked to be somewhere around my mom's age, stood before me. To my great relief, she did not look anything like a ghost. She looked like a totally normal lady. Mostly normal, anyway. Something with the way she dressed and the way her hair was styled didn't quite feel right. It felt a little old-fashioned or something, but it wasn't that weird, and it definitely didn't read as scary or supernatural. I stood there silently and awkwardly stared at her. I'd been so absolutely certain that no one was home that I wasn't prepared to speak to anyone. I was utterly shocked that she'd answered the door. I'd been positive that the place was abandoned. I hadn't heard anyone inside make a peep before she showed up. She smiled as she awaited my response. And it was a nice smile. The kind I was used to seeing on my mom's face, my grandma's face, the faces of most of my friends' moms, the smile of a grown-up who has kids and who likes kids. She literally couldn't have appeared less threatening. "Where's Robin?" she asked playfully. "Robin?" I repeated slowly, confused. I still felt a bit dazed. "Well, you are Batman, aren't you?" she lightly teased. I had literally completely forgotten who I dressed up as. I'd forgotten I was wearing a costume at all, and that I was holding a bag of candy in my hand. I'm Batman," I stammered, sounding like a complete idiot. I felt my face flush warm and red with embarrassment. Why couldn't I act normal? She laughed and then said, "Yeah, you are Batman. I can see that. And does Batman have a question for me?" "What?" I asked, still feeling dumb as a rock. I wanted to at least close my mouth as I stood there, but I couldn't even manage that. I just kept staring at her, mouth agape, struggling with each and every awkward moment of our incredibly benign interaction. She continued to smile, seeming patiently amused. "I see you're holding a bag of candy. Were you maybe going to say trick or treat?" she asked softly, like she was speaking to a dog or a confused toddler, instead of a 10-year-old of supposedly normal intelligence. Incredibly, I still could not find my words. I still could not believe I was talking to the lady of the dead house. Did this kind-seeming lady really kill her family? That seemed impossible. I wanted to turn and look at my friends. They must be going crazy, I thought, or laughing at me after having set me up, knowing damn well the entire time that a regular lady lived there and had never hurt anyone and just didn't take great care of her house. They'd set me up to look like a fool. But I didn't hear my friends. I didn't hear anything at all, actually, except for the lady in front of me. Not the noise of cars slowly driving by or of any of the many other trick-or-treaters milling about, or of smiling parents answering other doors and over-enthusiastically admiring costumes while disseminating enough processed sugar to kill 1,000 diabetics. I heard nothing but her. Sorry, I clumsily apologized, and then I weakly half held up my bag of candy and pathetically asked, "Trick or treat?" She flashed an even bigger smile, and I started to feel bad for her. Her smile looked kind of sad. Her eyes didn't match it. They were misted up just the tiniest bit. Now I wondered what had really happened to her. Where were her kids? Why was her house so run down? Why hadn't she or anyone else taken care of her lawn or her trees? And how come no other kids were knocking on her door on Halloween night? She opened up the front door wider. "My apologies," she said. "I wasn't expecting anyone to come by. I somehow forgot it was Halloween. Can you believe that? Silly me. But don't you worry, Batman. I have some candy bars in the kitchen. Full-size ones, too. Kit Kats and Snickers, I think." She gestured for me to enter. "Come on in," she warmly offered. And I did. I followed her right into the dead house. And I didn't notice that the door not only shut itself behind me, but that it locked itself as well. For whatever reason, in that moment, I didn't feel scared. I also didn't care that my friends were watching and would probably think that I was a total badass, fearlessly walking into the dead house like Luke Skywalker, courageously confronting both Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine in the second Death Star in Return of the Jedi. Or that I was an idiot for doing exactly what Ty told me not to do, going into the dead house after being invited to enter on Halloween night. I didn't think about my mom warning me about strangers either, how she had made me promise 4 things before we had headed out for the night: to look both ways before crossing each street, to stay with my friends at all times, to be back at the house no later than 9:30, and most importantly, to not go into anyone's house under any circumstances. All I thought in that moment was that she seemed like a nice lady, and that she had full-size candy bars in the kitchen. I love Kit Kats. And I still think to this day that at one time, she probably was a nice lady, before the laughing man drove her mad. I can't remember for sure what the inside of her house looked like before I walked in. I'm not sure I ever even saw. I couldn't really see inside any of the windows before I knocked. It was too dark. And when she answered the door, I don't think I could really see behind her either. It was again just way too dark. Still, I would have never expected it to look anything like it did. All of a sudden, the house didn't look abandoned anymore. Far from it. It absolutely looked lived in. And unlike the outside, it looked well taken care of. It wasn't dark anymore. The carpet looked vacuumed, and there wasn't dust everywhere. There wasn't dust anywhere. Normally, when I was 10, I would have never noticed something like that, but these were obviously special circumstances. And I remember noticing because it was so drastically different than anything I would have ever expected. There were pictures on the walls, lots of family photos. Several of them were of the lady who I had just met with a man who I assume must have been her husband. And in a lot of the photos, they were also with who I assume were their two kids, a boy and a girl. The oldest the kids looked in the pictures was somewhere around my age. And the oldest the lady looked was how she looked that Halloween night. I remember expecting to see her husband at any moment, assuming he must be home. And maybe their kids too, if they weren't out trick-or-treating themselves. But the house was so quiet when I followed her into the kitchen. It didn't sound like anyone else was around. "What's your real name?" she asked as she opened a drawer and took out some candy bars. "Ryan," I said, finally remembering how to interact normally with another human being. "Ryan Mellard." "Oh, I'm surprised," she said with a grin. "I was expecting you to say Bruce Wayne." "Who's Bruce Wayne?" I asked like a complete moron. "Really?" she teased before she laughed. It was a warm, sweet laugh. The laugh of a schoolteacher or a children's librarian. The laugh of a gentle, patient adult who was endlessly amused by all the crazy things kids say. "Batman doesn't know who Bruce Wayne is?" "Oh yeah, duh." I laughed and shook my head. And then I was about to ask her what her kids were doing for Halloween when the house suddenly changed. It was the craziest thing I had ever experienced up until that moment. Years later, I dropped acid in college, way too much. And it was kind of like that. It was like when you're tripping. Even though you're standing in the same place, looking at the same things, everything can suddenly look totally different. That's what happened. In a moment, everything in the house got darker. It was as if it had been a bright sunny day when I'd first walked in, and then in a flash it was midnight. Or maybe a better way to explain it is to imagine every single light in the whole house being connected to the same dimmer switch, and someone had quickly pushed it down, and all the lights had went to their lowest settings in an instant. But that wasn't all. It wasn't just darker. When the light faded, it was like someone also turned off the heat and simultaneously turned on some kind of magical air conditioner, and they dropped the temperature by about 30 or 40 degrees. I hadn't been cold when I was outside. My costume, combined with that strange superhuman ability most little boys possess at some point that allows them to do things like wait for their school bus on a frosty October morning and legitimately feel fine wearing nothing but a t-shirt and shorts, had kept me feeling nice and toasty. But now I was freezing. I could see my breath. But strangely, I remember noticing that I couldn't see this lady's breath. Speaking of the lady, her appearance had changed even more dramatically than the light. She looked not necessarily older, but really, really haggard, totally and completely exhausted, and insane. To help you picture the transformation she had just gone through, imagine if you had two identical twins who really did look identical when they were little kids, but now they were middle-aged. One of them had exercised regularly, had eaten healthy food, gotten plenty of rest, and stayed hydrated, and led a pretty stress-free life since they'd become an adult. But the other, they'd gotten addicted to meth and had lived on fast food and soda and smoked like a chimney and slept, under a bridge or something, never really getting a good night's rest. Oh, and they had completely lost their mind. And now, even though you could tell they were twins if you really, really looked, they didn't actually look the same. You wouldn't even think they were related at quick glance. When I first walked in, she was the healthy twin. But now she was the other one, with big bags under her eyes, thinner hair, a shakiness to her hands, and an overall vibe of just not being well. Like, not well at all. Trying to process all of this, especially at 10 years old, was overwhelming. I felt sick, confused, and dizzy, like I could pass out at any moment, but also deathly afraid that if I did pass out, no one would ever find me again, at least not alive. Ty's words echoed in my head. If you knock on her door on Halloween night, she'll answer it and invite you in. But if you go in, you'll never come back out. I was about to turn and run for the front door when the lady looked intensely at me with wild and terrified eyes. She hissed as she glanced back and forth between me and something just beyond me. "Ryan, do not turn around," she warned. "He's behind you." Right as she said that, I heard what sounded like footsteps of some kind of animal approaching. Whoever he was, he sounded big. And then almost as if I couldn't help it, as if someone else was controlling me, I did exactly what she had told me not to do. I turned around and started screaming. I'm still not sure what I was looking at. It was tall and massive. I'd guess around 7 feet tall. It had a body like a man's, with legs and arms and a human torso. It had a neck and a head with a human nose and a mouth and 2 eyes. Well, maybe not 2 eyes, maybe not any eyes. I'd thought it had eyes when I first looked. I just thought they were really dark. But I think they were non-existent, just 2 pits where eyes should have been, and yet it still could clearly see me. It had long, silky-looking raven black hair woven into a braid that hung down its back behind its broad shoulders. It was bare-chested and muscled with deeply tanned skin. It wore Native American-looking buckskin leggings, or at least that's what they looked like to me. It didn't wear shoes because it didn't have any feet, at least not human feet. It had hooves, like a cow's or a bison's. It didn't have hands either. It had like the big paws of a bear or a wolf. It wore a headdress made of bison horns and fur and feathers. It looked like a twisted, monstrous version of some ancient tribal medicine man. I'll never forget all those details. I was so completely captivated by the surreal horror of it all. What I remember best is its mouth. It had the biggest, cruelest smile you could ever possibly imagine. You've probably heard the phrase grinning from ear to ear as a figure of speech. This thing's grin literally stretched from ear to ear, and its teeth, while not sharp-looking fangs, were somehow creepier and more upsetting than that. It had teeth shaped like human teeth, but far, far too big for the size of its face, and too many of them. It reminded me of a shark's mouth. And worse than its appearance was its laugh. I'll never forget it. It was the only sound it ever made, at least the only sound you could hear with your ears. But it didn't laugh with its mouth. Its mouth didn't move at all. I don't remember it ever moving, in fact. It remained frozen in this impossibly gigantic grin, and yet it still managed to emit the sound of total and utter madness. It was the kind of laugh that would make you want to take a pair of sharp pencils and jam each one deep inside one of your ears until you had thoroughly punctured both your eardrums just so you would never have to hear it anymore. It would truly be better to never hear anything at all than to keep hearing that. I now felt more dazed than I had when the lady had first opened the door. I just stood there dumbfounded as I stared at this man-like, absolutely terrifying entity. No fight or flight reflex kicked in as it continued to steadily approach me. It moved with one methodical step forward after another on its hooves, staring at me without eyes, sporting a massive, devilish, frozen grin on its face, and laughing, always laughing, as I continued to helplessly stand and stare. Ah! Finally, I screamed, "Chad, we have to run!" Even though she said Chad instead of Ryan, the lady was clearly talking to me, and it wasn't like I was in the right mental or physical space to correct her. She pulled me back by my shoulder, spun me around, and grabbed my hand, and then we both started running away from that horrible thing. Soon we were hustling up the stairs. We then ran down the hall, and she led me into her bedroom, shutting and locking the door behind us. And somewhere along the way, or maybe once we got into that room, I'm not sure, the house changed again. It felt light, like it had when I first walked in. The lady looked healthy and rested, and not at all crazy and exhausted. She was back to being the good twin. The temperature felt pleasant again. Weirdest of all, the sun was out now. Looking out her bedroom window, you would think it was the middle of a beautiful summer's day, even though it had been dark when I'd walked over to knock on her door. I looked around for my friends, but I couldn't find them. I didn't see anyone dressed up for Halloween. It felt like I'd walked into somebody's dream. "Chad!" the lady yelled, now sounding upset with me. "How many times have I told you and your sister to stay away from that thing? You have to run! You have to hide!" She warned sternly as she placed her hands on my shoulders, lowered herself down to my level, and simultaneously stared both into my eyes and also straight through me. It was the strangest thing. It was like she was talking to someone else who was somehow also standing right where I was standing, or maybe just slightly behind me. Then she looked above me and at the door, and we heard that thing's hooves clicking and clacking up the stairs. "Chad!" she hissed as she lowered her voice and refocused her attention in my general direction. "Where's your sister?" When I didn't answer, how could I answer? I didn't have a sister. She shook me by the shoulders and intensely whispered, "Where's your sister, Chad? Where's Amanda? We can't let the laughing man find her. Do you understand what he can do? What he can make you think? What he can make you do to the people you care about? To yourself?" Then it was like she forgot about trying to stay quiet so that thing couldn't find us, and she roared, "Don't you remember what he made me do to your father?" That was when I broke down and started crying. Looking back, I can't believe it took me that long. I guess I was in shock. "I don't know what's happening," I sobbed. "I'm scared. I want to go home." "Oh, Chad, my sweet, sweet boy," she now cooed as she wrapped me up in her arms. "You are home, baby. Mama's got you. And I won't let that thing make you feel what I felt. I won't let him make you do what he made me do. I won't let him change you." The house transformed yet again after I heard that horrible laugh. Once more it was dark inside and out and cold, so cold. And the lady who seemed to think she was my mom and that I was her son Chad, she again looked tired and worn out and insane. She was the bad twin again. Bam, bam, bam! The laughing man pounded on the bedroom door. "Chad," the lady hissed, "come with me." She led us briskly away from the door to the hallway and into the attached bathroom, where she opened a drawer and pulled out a little bottle of liquid that had been sealed inside a Ziploc bag with the word emergency written on it in Sharpie. "Mama needs you to drink this right now," she said hurriedly as she frantically opened the bag, "so you'll never have to worry about the laughing man again." "What is it?" I asked nervously through the tears I was still crying. I had a bad feeling that it wouldn't be something that would make me feel any better. Whack! The lady slapped me hard across the face. I was stunned more than hurt. No one had ever hit me before. "Just drink it!" she roared. "Mama knows best, and you will do what I say, Chad!" She reached down and grabbed me, and I was sure she was going to try and force me to drink whatever was in the bottle when I heard the voice of a scared girl who sounded like she was somewhere around my age, or maybe a little younger, yell out from down the hall, "Mommy! Mommy, help!" She let me go. "Amanda!" she said, sounding panicked and eyeballing the door. Then she looked back at me and she looked furious. "It's your sister Amanda, Chad! You were supposed to stay with her and protect her!" she screamed. Then we heard the thing again, the laughing man. The beast sounded like it had moved away from us down the hall while we were in the bathroom. "You stay right here, Chad," the lady commanded sternly. "I'll come back for you after I help Amanda." Then she called out to her daughter as she moved into the bedroom and then towards the hall. "Amanda! Mom is coming! Stay where you are, baby!" And with that, she opened the bedroom door and fled across the second floor of the house. Now, for the first time, I was alone in the dead house. I moved over to the doorway and cautiously peeked my head out into the hall where I could see her shimmying right past the monster, the laughing man. I thought it was so odd how he didn't grab or hurt her. He just watched her as she quickly opened her daughter's bedroom door and popped inside. Next, before the monster had a chance to turn and look at me, before it could start to come back down the hall to find me, and before the lady came back and tried to make me drink whatever was in that little bottle, poison, I assumed, I quietly snuck across the hallway, opened a door to another bedroom, slipped inside, and carefully and quietly shut the door behind me. Inside, it was cold and dark, just like the rest of the house at that moment. But then the darkness lifted a bit, just enough for me to see what was in the bed, what I think the dead house or the laughing man wanted to show me. The dead body of a boy about my age. The boy from the family photos downstairs. The real Chad. He was lying on his back with his arms at his sides and his comforter pulled up to his shoulders. His eyes and mouth were open. Dried vomit was crusted on his lips and chin. More vomit stained the comforter. She'd poisoned him, I thought. She'd made him drink what she had wanted me to drink. Hearing that insane cackle again made me almost piss myself. The laughing man was just outside Chad's bedroom. Luckily, I then heard the sound of his hooves moving into the lady's bedroom across the hall, and I dared to crack open the door. His monstrous back was facing me, and when I watched him walk into her room, I knew that this was my chance, maybe my only chance, to make it back to the stairs and then down towards the front door. I had to get out of the house. I walked out into the hallway as quietly as I could, as if I really was Batman and needed to sneak up on the Joker. Thank God my mom had insisted that I wear my rubber rain boots since it was muddy out. They were so quiet against the hardwood floor. While the beast, the laughing man, looked for me in the lady's bedroom, I made it all the way down the hall. As I tiptoed, I could hear the girl. I could hear her struggling, fighting for her life. "Mommy, no!" she cried out. "Please, Mommy, I don't want to drink it!" I could hear her gagging and choking, and then being smothered. When I'd finally made it to the top of the stairs, I couldn't help but look into the open door of her room. I saw the lady with her hand covering her daughter's mouth and nose, holding her tight, making sure she didn't spit the poison back up. I saw the girl's eyes start to close as she stopped fighting. And then the lady saw me. "Chad!" she shrieked. "Where do you think you're going?" Before she could do anything else, I ran down the stairs, and from above I heard the sounds of hooves click-clacking quickly towards me from down the hall. I ran to the front door, grabbed the knob, and twisted. But it wouldn't open. I pushed against the deadbolt lever, but I couldn't move it far enough to unlock it. The dead house was refusing to let me go. And now I could hear the laughing man coming down the stairs. I spun away from the front door to make a run for the kitchen, but the floor plan I'd seen when I'd first come in, it had completely changed. The hallway I had just crossed was gone. In its place, a narrow stairwell opened to my right, the kind that shouldn't exist in a house like this. It looked too steep, like it went too far down, and its steps didn't match the stairs that led to the second floor. They were much older, not well constructed, unpainted, unstained boards made of dry, faded wood, splintered at the edges. They looked like a crooked set of old dirty teeth. A blast of cold air poured up from below that made my nose sting and my eyes water. The temperature and light fluctuations I'd already experienced had already left me feeling incredibly disoriented, and now I was trying to wrap my mind around a house that could also instantaneously rearrange its construction. I don't remember exactly what I was thinking in that moment, but I must have been close to resigning myself to the distinct possibility that I was never going to get out, that I was going to die in the dead house, just like Ty had warned. I'd willingly gone inside, and now I was doomed to stay inside. Forever. I didn't want to go down those stairs. But then I heard someone crying down beneath the house. Two someones, actually. A boy and a girl. "Chad? Amanda?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Were the actual real kids down there somehow, I wondered, still alive? I realize now that that might not make much sense, but in that moment, nothing was making sense. I'd been trick-or-treating, living the regular Halloween life of a 10-year-old minutes before. Now I was trapped inside a fever dream. I gingerly took one step down, then another, the light dimming further with each hesitant creak. After, 20 or 30 steps down, the stairway dumped me into the basement. Most of the old carpet had been pulled back to reveal the concrete underneath, and the concrete floor was cracked around a perfect circle in the center of the room, a pit maybe 6 feet across. Something about that circle told me that pit had not been dug. Not by the family still trapped in that house, at least. No, it had been opened. The crying I'd heard, was still hearing, was coming from deep inside it. I think maybe the ghost of that woman was showing me where the ancient evil inside the house had come from. That pit had been there long, long before that house was ever built. It drew me near. I stepped closer towards it, just close enough to realize there was no bottom that my eyes could find. Only a darkness that looked thick like tar. And then the whole house trembled with a slow shudder I could feel through my rubber boots. The crying had stopped. It was just a trick, a way to lure me closer to the edge. And then seemingly from down in the darkness, but really from inside my head, he spoke to me. I heard him only with my mind and not my ears.
"Stay, Ryan. Stay and go down easy. Don't make me make sure it hurts."
The laughing man. He must have crawled up and out of that pit at one point, destroyed that family that lived in the house. I stumbled back and nearly slipped and fell into the hole's hungry darkness. I bolted for the stairs and ran up them. Somewhere above me I heard hooves clacking once, twice. He was somehow both below and above me. I was scared to run right into him, but I had to keep going up. I had to try and get out again. I was hoping to find the kitchen, but when I hit the top step, it wasn't there. Not anymore. The house had transformed itself again. I found myself in a hallway that didn't belong to the dead house or any other house I'd ever seen. The walls were crowded with old mirrors, tall, skinny ones with bubbled glass, fat oval vanities gone green at the edges, gilt frames crawling with tarnish. I could see myself in a dozen of them at once. Except it wasn't me I was looking at. Not exactly. In the mirrors I was older, Late 20s or maybe early 30s. My Batman mask was gone. I was wearing a collared, short-sleeved shirt, the kind my dad would wear to work. And behind me in every mirror, my wife and young kids, people I didn't know yet, were frozen at a dinner table I'd never seen. And my mouth, grown-up me's mouth, was split in a grin too wide to be human, ear to ear, full of too many teeth. My eyes were gone, just two pits.
I'll find you, Ryan. I'll make it hurt.
The older me said without moving his lips. It was a laughing man's thoughts inside my skull again, but using my grown-up face to say them.
Now that I've seen you, I can always find you.
And then all the mirrors began to fog up, and an invisible finger wrote the same message across all of them at once.
You came inside, Ryan, and now you'll never leave.
I squeezed my eyes shut and ran further down this new corridor until the hallway coughed me out into the kitchen. And it looked like it did when I'd first come in, thank God. I ran through it and took a left into the dining room. Ah! I tried to stop from screaming, but I couldn't. The moment I entered the room, the house lit up again. It wanted to show me something more, or rather the laughing man did. What I saw now was the man from the family photos on the walls, the lady's husband, sitting dead at the head of the dining room table. He'd slumped forward in his chair and fallen over face first into his food. Poisoned, I thought. He'd also been poisoned. I didn't have time to look at him for long. I could hear the monster's hooves approaching me from behind, and I moved quickly across the dining room and soon found myself in some sort of sunroom with a bunch of big windows facing the backyard. And then I saw another possible way out. There was a back door. I ran to it. "Cat, what are you doing?" The lady had entered the sunroom from a separate part of the house. She approached me from my left as I faced the back door while the laughing man approached from the dining room. "Chad, where do you think you're going? Come with me!" the lady insisted. Then she lowered her voice and pleaded, "So I can protect you, baby. So I can make sure you never have to see him again." I ignored her as I grabbed the handle and tried to twist. It wasn't locked. It popped open. I couldn't believe it. I didn't understand then, and I don't understand now why one door wouldn't open and another would. Why the laughing man hadn't let me escape the first time I tried to leave, but now I was able to exit. But before I could step outside, I heard his voice from deep within my head again. Once more, I was hearing him like you can hear your own thoughts.
Stay. Stay and drink what your mama gives you. It's the only way. I'll find you, Ryan. Now that I've seen you, I can always find you. Let her help and you'll go easy, Ryan. If not, I'll make sure you go hard. I'll make sure it hurts.
I felt like I was being hypnotized. I started to turn back towards the lady, who stared at me with nothing but pure, unadulterated insanity in her eyes. I almost walked over to her. I was about to ask her to give me what she had given her real children so I could go easy, so I didn't have to go hard, so I didn't have to suffer. It seemed for a few moments like a wonderful idea, a kindness, a merciful end to my terror. But then I heard my friend Austin shouting from somewhere out in the distance, "Ryan! Ryan, what are you doing, dude? Come out before we get in trouble!" As he yelled, I again heard the laughing man from directly behind me. And that was it. I bolted out the door and ran around the side of the house where there was a gate in the fenced-in backyard, opened it, then kept running around to the front. I saw Austin, still dressed like dollar store Data, standing on the sidewalk by the street where the concrete path up to the front door of the dead house began. Darth Vader and Skeletor flanked him. I ran straight towards them, and as I did, the front door of the house opened up, and the lady, looking like the bad twin again, called out to me one last time, "Chad, where are you going? How could you leave me here? Chad, come home, son!" And from out of the darkness behind her, the laughing man appeared, staring over her head without eyes, flashing his mad and massive grin. And this time, we all saw him. We all heard him as well, as we backed up into the street. The front door slammed as we continued to back up. The four of us were nearly ran over. We were so busy being completely and utterly terrified, we hadn't looked for cars when we backed out into the street. I'd broken another one of my mom's rules for the night, but I of course didn't care. I was alive. I'd made it out of the dead house. We apologized to the driver, finished crossing the street, and then stood and looked back at the dead house one more time. I didn't see anything, but Austin did. He said he saw the woman looking out at us from one of the downstairs windows. And Grayson said he saw the laughing man looking out at us from another. At that point, we turned and started running. We ran all the way back to my house. Before we went inside, we convened in my yard, caught our breath, and promised not to tell my mom what had happened. My God, I would have gotten in so much trouble for going into that house. We all would have. And speaking of going into that house, I asked my friends why they hadn't called the cops or anything once I'd been gone for a while. They swore I hadn't been gone that long at all. They said that when I heard Austin call out for me, they had just barely crossed the street. That was the first time any of them had said anything. They didn't think I'd been in that house for more than 30 seconds. Definitely not for more than a minute. I can't explain how that was possible. Entering that house, it was like entering a whole nother world. One where virtually none of the rules from this world, not time, not dead people staying dead, applied. So that's my story. Or at least most of it. The scariest part. The four of us talked about what we had seen, mostly about what I had seen, of course, for hours that night. It was the main topic of our conversation for weeks. If I could go back in time, I wouldn't go back into that house again, but I will say it gave me an enormous amount of street cred with those guys and really cemented our friendship. I was in after that, especially when they ended up admitting that none of them had ever knocked on the door before and would not be knocking on it at any point in the future. A few years later, when I finally learned how to research old newspaper articles at the local library, I found out what had really happened with that lady and her family. Her name was Barbara Mott, and her husband was James. They had 2 kids, and they really were named Chad and Amanda. Chad was 11, and Amanda was only 9 when they died, when they'd been murdered. Barbara really had poisoned them. She'd poisoned all 3 of them on the same day back in 1974. She hadn't hanged herself like Ty said she had. She'd poisoned herself just over a week later. She'd stayed with their dead bodies in that house for 9 full days. And before she died, she'd written, "Can't you hear the laughing man?" all over the walls. She'd also written, "Don't listen to him," and "He lies." I still don't know what the hell that thing is. A demon? A creature from another terrible world that somehow crossed over into ours? The Motts were the first and only owners of that house, and I feel in my gut like that thing was in the land beneath their home before their house was ever built. It was just waiting for them. And then something happened that woke it up. I think Barbara saw or heard it before anyone else in her family did, or that maybe she was the only one who ever heard or saw it. I think it chose her for whatever reason. It started to torment her, warp her, pushing horrible, horrible thoughts into her head, like the thoughts it had pushed into my head right before I got out. I think it made her do what she did, and because of that, I feel worse for her than I do for the rest of her family. She didn't make some deal. Something attacked her. And now her ghost is still in that house with that thing, or at least it was. I think the kids I saw, the dad, they were just echoes. At least I hope that's what they were. I wonder if she's still there today. I wonder if the laughing man is too. I still worry sometimes that someday he'll find me. He said he could. He showed me he would. What if he tries to make me do to my family what he once made Barbara do to hers? I pray to God that Barbara was right when she wrote, "He lies." I've had nightmares about him ever since. And sometimes even when I'm not sleeping, usually at night when I'm either alone or the only one awake, I still hear him. I'll wonder if it's my time to go, and if I'll go hard. And that's it for this Nightmare Fuel. I hope you loved or were horrified by, or at least entertained by, today's tale of The Dead House. Today's tale was written by me, Dan Cummins, and scored by Logan Keith. Thanks again to the folks at AMC's Fear Fest for pushing me to do an extra tale this month, and for showcasing so many awesome classic horror movies. If you enjoyed this story, check out the rest of the Bad Magic Productions catalog. Time Suck every Monday at noon Pacific time, with little short sucks on some Fridays. These Nightmare Fuel episodes, some Fridays as well, and new episodes of the now long-running paranormal podcast Scared to Death, Tuesdays at midnight. Please go to badmagicproductions.com for all your Bad Magic needs, including show-related merch, and happy Halloween.
Bad Magic Productions.